And I really reminded the president in my humble way while seated down there, indeed, our land is sweeter than sugar. Why? Because I want to understand the relationship between the president and the foreign nationals who he calls investors. Why isn't he interested in giving the strength of the economy to the locals by giving the opportunity to people in Amuru who say they want to be the outgrowers? They want to grow the sugar cane, give it to Meta, and his interest is the cane itself. So let him do the processing. In this way, you actually give the economy to the right people, the owners of the place. Why would you want to give the land and at the same time take away the product? This to me is immoral. And if I were the president, I would really remind myself that I came on the stage based on a people-centered government. And if this is the people's voice, why not respect it for once? It only goes to confirm the fact that he is trying to use avenues such as parliament to appear democratic when he is actually running this country as his personal property, which is unfortunate. But then the fundamental question to ask is, there is what in the region is called the gap sugar, which is the sugar that the region employs. In the East African region, we are talking about 400,000 metric tons. So, if we are importing the sugar, and yet there is an opportunity for indigenous East Africans to grow the cane and supply it to the people to process, what's wrong with that? And there are allegations that the president, through these sugar investors, gets lots of campaign monies.
Is that so?
Yes.
Can you give us some documents to back?
Those allegations. Yeah, the question of NRM is there, probably can confirm or deny that.
Yes. Well, perhaps his accounts filed to the EC will
tell us. You see, will tell us.
No, you can even tell us tonight.
You can actually deny it. But then the issue is, what does climate change mean to the president? What does the growing population mean to the president? If the indigenous people were displaced from Abia just for settlement, why does he find it morally right to ditch it out in those thousands of hectares to what he calls investors? You know, today Ugandans, by the way, if they don't drink sugar, they won't die. They can eat sweet potatoes. I grew up not taking sugar, but I ate sweet potatoes.
Let's talk about.
So what I am saying is, in a nutshell, we need this sugar product for industrial use, for the pharmaceuticals, for bakeries and so forth and so forth. But the issue is, how can you?
We need to balance.
The Constitution is here. The principles of state policy. What do they say? What is so nationalistic about us which is left? So, if the giveaway of Mabira is something that the president finds right to do, he will molest the parliament to do so.
He said he's ready to go to war.
He will molest the parliament, and I can assure you, before you know it, this parliament will just be... Because today, people say, but this parliament is very good, and they are fireproof.
Well, they've come out very strong.
They have come out right now because elections have not drawn near. I will give you the classic example of an honorable member called Tinka Simire. Yes, when this NSSF thing came on, he was the firebrand guy.
Yes.
But when he got to the fact that these guys have the niche to whether he will succeed in his primaries or not, he made a U-turn. So, the president of the Republic of Uganda has continued to molest the parliament to pass his personal interests, so Mabira will not escape. To me, when he's hell-bent on something, he'll do it.
He'll get his way.
He'll get his way. Because today, the parliament of Uganda is not a making of the people.
But you're sounding very pessimistic on Honorable Abia.
Why not? Because I know the guys I'm dealing with.
I understand, but in the old parliament, we had only maybe two major protagonists of, independence, if you like. Honorable Bajenzachi is now a minister. We had Honorable Sechkubo. Now we have many more people who are willing to come out and speak in the vein of those people. Why would you be pessimistic with that?
This is for now. Just watch the space, because the next elections are probably 54 months away. And so
5 years, almost.
5 years,
Go on.
54 months down
So
the
we
road.
might have
We will
5 years.
see this as the time draws, closer to the elections.
But why did the president not bring it before the last election? If that's the kind of the cycle.
Because he had his own pressures to deal with.
So maybe it will happen the same way.
Probably the pressure has not been that much, because you see, the tendency is when heads of states or heads of governments use certain economic misfortunes or situations to try to push a direction that originally was the intention.
Let's look at the alternatives.
Edmund, I think what the Honorable is saying, that this parliament is appearing independent, appearing to oppose what they think are, unjust initiative from the executive, only because elections are very far away. The nearer they draw to elections, the more they will be susceptible.
So he's saying, he's giving us hope that we might have Mabida for the next 4-5 years.
So I think that
I think
that to take our argument, the earlier this debate has come, the better, because the MPs are under no pressure for elections. So perhaps they will be more independent.
But even then, you see, when the president wants to do something, let me tell you the truth of the matter. The districts that have been created were strategically created in the sense that the president knows that now the parliamentary advantage he has comes from Western Uganda.
Yes.
He has created more districts. That means there are more MPs coming from Western Uganda than elsewhere in the country. So he will call the Western Caucus first, deal with that. He will come and confuse Buganda here. He's reaching other areas.
No.
It's okay.
We must really dismiss this suggestion by Honorable Christian. The president ofUganda has never, in my opinion, called the Western Caucus to discuss issues of that nature.
He doesn't need to do it that way. He will call it through his prime minister or even through you, my honorable colleague. You can deny that is you would always deny that. But isn't it true that there are more districts in Western Uganda than elsewhere in this country today? And isn't it true that you get that 100% support?
Let's move forward. Let's move forward.
From the powers that be.
Let's talk about the alternatives, Honorable Bahati. The New Vision published an editorial, which I think, in my view, is the best editorial I've read from them in 20 years, probably. That's my personal view. I could be. Maybe other people have their own views. They said farmers, small farmers, should be empowered to actually make their own sugar. They can grow small plots of sugarcane and manufacture their own sugar at that plot. I thought that's the best idea they've come up with.
Or even chew the cane.
Why can't we do this? It's possible to make sugar on a small scale farm. Why are we still talking about huge farms? We're still doing large dams here. In other places they have gone small dams. Why can't we go small scale on sugar?
I think that's a trend worldwide, on a trend of utilizing the little land to produce maximally. And I think if we utilize the existing land we have to increase productivity, we can achieve the same objectives.
So it's possible
having
for us,
sugar.
We can promote it like Bukenya, the vice president, promoted rice on small scale.
Well, I think what we need to do is really to explore ways on how to increase productivity on the existing land. I think that will help.
Is that something you think can be done? Going away from the big farms and coming to the small ones as an alternative?
Now, for me, the issue is let the outgrowers do their thing. Let them give the cane to these guys. If anything, Ugandans can decide to choose sugar cane instead of sugar if that's what they want for the sake of Mabel.
All right. As we move forward, of course, with a cup of hot tea on the side. Anyhow, in Western Uganda, Sangobe, one of the oldest large plantation farms, was reclaimed by the owners. One Mr. Patel. They have 146,000 hectares. That is 16 Kakira sugar plantations, 16 of them in one course. So why can't we go there? Why do we stick to Mabida? Maybe that's something we should need to consider as we dig up. Let's talk about the anti-homosexuality bill. Honorable Bahati, you came up with this bill. Now it's being defeated. Cabinet says they won't support it. They say the result will stop the progress on this so-called David Bahati bill. It has also caused a little bit of discomfort in other places. Could this be the end of this bill that people think is inconsistent with the human rights laws and international accords?
First, I don't sit in cabinet, and cabinet has not in any fora communicated that have tried to drop the bill. In the first place, they have no capacity to drop a bill that they don't hold. This is a private member's bill, which every member of parliament has a constitutional right to move a private member's bill. We moved this bill on the 29th of April 2009. Cabinet was present in the House, and the whole House gave me permission and my colleagues to move forward. And did not do that for the sake of it. They did it because we have a problem. We must stop the promotion of homosexuality. We must stop the inducement of our children in schools. We must protect our family and the decency of our society. And again, the permission is a proposal. Anybody can make an amendment to it. So cabinet cannot drop what it doesn't hold. Of course, cabinet is a very important stakeholder in the process of legislation, but as far as I know, the president of this country does not support homosexuality. Even if the worst came to the worst, that cabinet, members of cabinet do not support this bill, they are going to be ashamed on the floor of the House.
So you still bring this bill to Parliament?
The only institution that has the legal capacity to stop any registration of this nature, private members bill, is Parliament. And I know the members of Parliament know that 95% of Ugandans don't support homosexuality. There could be some proposals that the committee made amendments to the bill, because when you produce a proposal, the best way now cabinet should do is to enrich the proposal. How do we stop the promotion? How do we stop the inducement of children in the schools? How do we stop these institutions that are bringing in money to just destroy the future of our children? This is a serious matter. No one can joke with this matter. It's about the children of Uganda. And if we cannot be serious about this, if we have reached a stage of trading the future of our children with the dollars we get from the West, then we must stand up and be counted. And I know members of Parliament will not really stand this. I know that there could be some clauses to amend. That will be done. But cabinet, I know I've been in touch with cabinet as a stakeholder to get some consultation here and there, and I've not seen anything that really suggests that they can go against this bill. After all, when we sought for permission to move the bill, all members of cabinet were in the House,
yes,
and they passed it. So they cannot come at this stage and say we are blocking. How can you drop what you don't have?
Honorable Abia, is that something that you think will eventually see passed into law?
You see, the provisions, one of the reasons as to why the Bahati bill is facing a lot of challenges is the provisions that they have in the Constitution. Actually, it's is that Article 31?
Yes.
Article 31, Clause 1, and actually 2A.
Yes.
Where marriage is pronounced between a man and a woman, and same-sex marriages are prohibited
by our Constitution.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
And then the issue here is, by the way, he's talking about children, protection of children. We're also talking about protection of vulnerable adult Ugandans. You know, this poverty comes with all these ills. And so the question is, what are the measures that are in place to protect our children and Ugandans, vulnerable Ugandans? Because some of these people come through these mushrooming churches, they come through NGOs. Look at who comes into this country and who gets out. You have people coming to get their visas here as they enter. Meanwhile, for us to get to those countries, you have to be issued with a visa, you know, right here before you get there.
Yes.
So there is no mechanism of controlling who gets into this country for what purpose. Mostly we're talking about tourism, but this tourism is also coming up with the other external social behavior, you see,
yes,
which are not part of our culturally accepted norms here in the country. So to me, the issue is, the Constitution is here, and this is a bad situation. But we must go on to understanding the policies that we have, whether we have them, the lawyer is here, you'll tell me, whether we have a real child protection policy in this country, whether we have a way of saving who comes into this country, for what purpose, and leaves when, whether we track the kinds of things that are going on in the country. You look at the information through ICT and so forth, people are Skyping, you know. some little children were talking to me about internet dating. I was shocked. I said, this does happen? Then one was rushing, a university student was rushing to say, my boyfriend said he will be on Skype. And we are dating on Skype. I said, what? I said, yeah, but these are the things that are coming on.
Okay.
So we need to protect the country from the external social behavior that is not acceptable here. But it's a very difficult thing to do as well. But government needs to invest there. Like Honorable Bahati has said, it's just something that I cannot imagine.
Okay.
But when the president is saying, for example, that he got a call from Hillary Clinton, he got a call from the British Prime Minister. What is this thing? What is this thing? And the gentleman here is suffering. You have a ban on travel, right?
Not a bad time in the US.
Yes. So this spells to the magnitude that external influence is having on our cultural norms, practices and traditions.
Because,
but we need to guard them, because once we lose them, it will be very costly to reclaim them.
of course, in the US, they've become very liberal. Some people think that's why development is moving to China, which doesn't support some of these things. Before we hear your liberal views, Mr. Nichols
They may not be
Opiyo,
as liberal as you think.
before we hear your liberal views, Honorable Bahati, this constitution says marriage between persons of the same sex is prohibited. It's already in the code book, the constitution. Why would you need a separate?
The constitution, I know the lawyer is here, but provides a legal framework from which we can have enabling laws. So as much as you have that, but if somebody went to the church and wedded, maybe the judges will have difficulties in what kind of offense will be there. How are you going to operationalize that article?
Right.
So this is a framework, but we need enabling laws.
We also have contradictions. For example, the Anglican Church elsewhere recognizes these are they gay bishops. Now in Uganda, I think in Africa, some bishops they say no, we don't recognize this.
Right.
So you who is in that faith, what is your conviction about this when you go to Europe and you are here? So these are some of the issues that are making some sections of society.
Let's hear the liberal views of Mr. Nichols Opiyo.
Let me just state this very clearly, that I am deeply opposed to the proposed bill, largely because I think that the bill is riding
Men should be allowed to marry men.
The bill is riding on emotions, riding on sentimentalism, and not on the basis of any scientific research or figures. But also secondly, because I think that 98% of what is contained in this bill already exists in our law books. The penal code provides for the offences of having canon knowledge against the order of nature. The Constitution provides for who can marry, who cannot marry. So I do think that largely what is contained in this bill already exists in other laws.
So it's a redundant thing.
But also more importantly, I think that key provisions of this bill are unconstitutional.
Like what?
I'll give you an example. This bill, if passed in the state it is now, provides that Uganda should renege from its national legal instruments to which it's a party.
Give us examples.
If that instrument promotes homosexuality.
Give us examples.
For example, it would therefore mean that Uganda would withdraw from being a party to the ICCPR.
What is that?
It's the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights.
Yes.
To which the NRM government acceded to it in 1986.
Which allows men to marry fellow men, among other things.
Don't put it in my mouth. I'm just putting my point very clear.
No, but that is what you're
for the
saying
elderly
in a
person, that's what you're
nutshell.
saying. You're couching it in very flowery language.
The point that I'm making is that we have international legal obligations under those instruments, and we've got to follow them because we are party to them. Okay. Thirdly, the bill provides for a criminal offence for anyone if you know that somebody is gay
and I keep quiet
and you don't report. It actually makes it impossible for a doctor to keep a doctor-client confidentiality. A lawyer, for example, will be forced to do
become a whistleblower.
Exactly. So I do think that largely this bill is redundant, is repetitive.
Right. Okay.
But also more importantly, there is a continuous debate about consensual rights. You cannot legislate about rights that involve the conscience of individuals.
So tomorrow they might want to marry chickens.
You just can't.
They might want to marry.
I'll give you a redundant provision of the law. Can I just make my point and finish? I give you a redundant point in our law that is completely useless. The offences against prostitution. I have read the law books. I'm yet to come across a case in which somebody has been convicted for the offence of prostitution. It's redundant. Because these things happen in the privacy of people and you cannot legislate moral values. I do agree with the part of the bill that protects children, but I think that if you're seeking to protect children, you must begin to talk about the wider child protection strategy as opposed to a sector of people.
You have to move forward.
For us mothers,
of course, you made a very strong point.
You still remain a child.
You cannot legislate moral values. I think that's a
no, you can't.
Maybe
you
we'll talk
can't.
about that. We'll pick it from there next time. That's a very important point. Let's talk about Makerere. We'll start with you, Nicholas. Makerere University academics tough strike. They are pushing on with their strike, demanding for more pay and resolution of their long-standing dispute with the NIC over their money. The lecturers want at least 8 million shillings, up from 2 million shillings.
You see, Edimon, the strike in Makerere must be seen in context.
Yes.
It is one of the many strikes and demands for pay rise in this country. On this show a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned that teachers are the epitome of poverty in this country.
Yes.
In my village, if somebody built a funny house, you say that's a teacher's house.
Yeah.
You know, the teacher's coat is being used to describe a bad coat in the village, jacket in the village. So I do think that the problems of Makerere are a wider problem of a salary iniquity in this country that I think needs to be addressed comprehensively. The salaries and emoluments of people who hold this country together, the common teacher, the policeman on the road, the doctor in the hospital, is far less than the salary of a political appointee or somebody holding a political office. There's a good article in the Monitor comparing salaries of top executives in this country.
Yes.
People are earning 43 million shillings. People are earning 30 million shillings.
We're still waiting to see that.
You see? So you see that there's this big disparity, and we need to address the bigger problem of the difference in earnings people who serve this country. Secondly, I do think also that Makerere's problem points to a very important matter, the question of the social protection. Because you have a group of teachers who have put their money in an insurance scheme for future, to guarantee their future.
Yes.
And you can see the weakness in the structures that governed social security of our people in this country. That you have hungry businessmen who are willing to come in, now that Parliament has even moved further and liberalized this sector, to fleece people. In the hope, I do think so. I do think that people like Nick are fleecing the teachers from their hard-earned cash.
Okay, that's a big debate. We'll talk about that another. Honorable Abia, they want more money, from 2 million to 8 million, net pay, not gross.
But that's even a little way the way. Because work that involves academics is serious business. And with the fine brains we have in this country, if we just motivated our academics,
we could go far. Could have our own Silicon Valley.
Absolutely. But look at what we do with these brains that we have. We undermine their potential. We don't reward their work. As a result, they leave the country. I don't just imagine why a PhD, gets 500,000 shillings and an RIDC minus papers is paid 2 million shillings. It's immoral.
Right.
And that calls for, as we talked earlier,
2 million actually.
Yes, they now want their pay increased. The districts are rising. So it bothers me that the country cannot see academics as a priority.
Right.
Because really, nothing propels development in any part of the world if you don't really educate and invest in the brains that you have.
Right.
Because it's these brains that are going to turn around the other factors of production and make the country grow. But that said, just ask yourself, how much is the value of the brain that you have? How much is the value of your instruction of students in a class? Yes. So when these gentlemen and ladies are asking for 8 million net, this must even be given without question.
Right.
Because we have invested the resources of this country in areas that are not meaningful. Let me give you an example.
Likewise.
The 2 trillion that we spend on buying jets.
But they're keeping us safer.
No. If we
spend
that money on the 143,000 teachers, primary school teachers, each of them for this financial year was going to get 1,105,000 shillings. So how can it be that? You can't pay the academics the money that they are
people should be given more money?
Well, I think one point I have to make is that Parliament has moved forward. Yesterday we approved the recommendation by the Committee of Local Government and Public Service to have a remuneration board look at salaries across the board. But just in 1 minute, it's intellectually dishonest on part of Nicholas to say that people cannot make laws on morality. That That's not true. It's an Ugandan suggests that we should not think about our country, restrict our country from getting into protocols that endanger the children and the family of Uganda. And I encourage him to read more. There is a lot of scientific evidence. There is a lot of scientific evidence on homosexuality, and our research and our bill is based on that. But I will take it further. But on the issue of the strike of Makerere, I think it's important we sit down, have a board that looks across the board of all surroundings of Uganda. And we did that yesterday. We passed that recommendation. We hope executive will take it serious, because everybody is important. The teacher is important, accountant is important, the lawyer is important, a doctor is important.
We
must look at it.
Just quite quickly, just to rejoin that to what Honorable said. The point that I made is that even if you legislate moral matters, it may not be helpful. But also, quite importantly, while Honorable Bahati minds about what is happening in this country, the executive in this country knows exactly the weight that the international community brings to this project. I was in Bujumbura 2 weeks ago and I had the chance to speak to the head of the African division.
What did he say?
He does point to the effect that there is a lot of pressure on this country from everywhere around the world, and Uganda cannot afford to remain an island on this matter. They must flow with the global trend and accept to admit that their parties.
That's what makes you an Ugandan.
Thank you very much indeed. I guess Honorable David Bahati, thank you for coming to Spectrum. Mr. Nichols Opiyo, Honorable Christine Bakko. Thank you for tuning in. I've been your host, Edmond Tizito. Have a very good night.
Let's talk about the home of your dreams.